Ricas timtirosas, ricas naija timtir mas verdegon timtir. Nuha brosa mat isa, se timtra mas verdan. Costilis mazores, nuha cuba valerio. Udra migen, nuhis aldrizes tistaliot ilza. Episode 5. Rather than show you a game design today, I'm going to show you how to make a box that can hold game parts, such as a customized deck of cards. In this episode of Game Design Game, I'm going to do a little crafting project. I'm going to show how to make a box that can hold a customized deck of cards or possibly dice or other small things. This design is useful for a lot of purposes. And in addition, I'm going to be designing for the very first time a box that performs what I call a slow shuffle. And I'll talk about the use for this when I get to that box. So this is going to be a simple crafting project. Hopefully you'll have all these materials available to you. So what do you need to make these kinds of paper boxes? So first of all, you need some sort of paper. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but heavier stock will tend to make a sturdier box. But you can make this with ordinary, say, printer paper that you might have around the house. You'll need a pencil to sketch out the shape of the box. Then scissors to cut the shape out of paper. And then a ruler will help keep your edges straight. And then tape or glue will hold the box together, especially when it's empty. Optionally, colorful markers, pens, or pencils to decorate the box in any way that you like. All right, so the first project I'm going to show you is a card box. Specifically, I've received a deck of tarot cards that has no box. And they've just been sort of sitting in a stack for a while, and I thought it'd be nice to put them in a box for both to keep them together and for their, safekeeping so they don't get messed up or dirty sitting out too long. So this can work for any roughly box-shaped set of things, a deck of cards, a collection of, regular dice stacked together. But really you can make a box of just about any dimensions in this style, and it will tend to hold the objects within in a way that they won't casually fall out. And you could hold just about anything that you need for your gaming purposes. When you're making your own board games especially, this sort of box is very useful for keeping together any prototype parts that you don't want to just leave in a loose collection. Say, you could keep them in some sort of Ziploc bag, but if they need to be stabilized and not shaken too hard, the box will help with that. And some of the techniques I'll be showing you can be useful for all sorts of game-related crafting projects. You can make little tokens to move around, or possibly even shapes that become placeholders for say a board game with some three-dimensional aspects to it. You can use some of these techniques to prototype your shapes. So I'm going to be switching over to an overhead crafting view so that you can see what I'm doing while I talk through the steps. So what I have is a deck of tarot cards, 72 cards here, but I was also given a partial deck, the Major Arcana, with a different backing. And I'm going to put all of this in the same box. I'm going to create, as part of the project, a little bit of a divider so that I can keep the two decks separated inside the box. So step one is figuring out what size box you want. So that's where your measuring tool and pencil will come in handy. So I'm going to measure. So I'm going to stack these together and measure them all three ways. I'm going to make notes on the paper here. So I'm going to draw a little picture of the deck, and this way I can sort of indicate how big it is in each dimension. So we're going to go for the lengths of the cards. So 4 3/4 inches. And I'm probably going to round that up a little bit. Just I'd rather have a little bit loose than too snug and not be able to fit my cards when I'm done. So next to the width of the deck. That is 2 3/4 inches. Yes, I'm writing sort of upside down so that you can read it. And then the height of the deck, which I'm going to measure over on this side. That looks like 1 1/4. I'm going to check it on the side I can see better. 1 1/4 on this side. That looks like 1 1/4. I'm actually going to test this with the deck inside. It will help to maintain the box's shape when I'm fitting these pieces together. Perfect. All right, so failed experiment. Funny thing is, it's still 1 1/4 inches tall. Did I mismeasure something? Well, that would do it. All right, I've worked out my measurements. The next step is to draw out the template on my red paper that I want to make my red tarot deck box out of. And I'm going to make the bottom of the box on this sheet of paper. So that's this one here. 7 3/4 left to right, 7 1/4 front to back. So I'm going to turn the page this way, which leaves the most leeway in both directions. So I can see I've got essentially 4 major panels on both sides. The front panel is the mobile one, and just to balance things out a little bit, I think I will include a little top flap that I can fold over. Make it just a little bit higher than the 7 1/4 plus. So I'm going to leave about just a 1/2 inch, I think, at the bottom of the page for this flap. All of these pencil marks will be on the inside of the box. Okay, so there's the top to bottom measurements. Then I need to get my side-to-side measurements worked out. To do that, I think I want to start at the center and work my way out. So it's a good point for me to just double check that a card will actually fit in here. And the card should hopefully fit within all the pencil lines. So it's a little tight this direction, but there's a little more room this way. I'm gonna hope that's good enough. You can always fold the paper slightly different than the initial draw lines. Okay, so there's my various sides. Now, since I had this problem last time, I want to put my deck in there and make sure the 1.5 inches accommodates the whole deck. And yes, it looks like this will be good. All right, so now I want to add some extra little flaps for tucking things together. So this back is going to, from the bottom, this is going to fold up. Going to be a little fold over and then a fold down. Or sorry, other way around, fold inward to plaster this on the bottom inside. So this little flap is going to go right about there when I fold it over twice. That's going to leave a little gap in between these two areas, and these side pieces are going to tuck into it. Okay, I need to draw my sides. Okay, so these side flaps are going to tuck in between those. And because they don't have to do it dynamically over time, I can make these pretty robust. The exact shape and the exact length don't matter too much. These are going to be hidden. They're not going to be doing any actions as part of opening and closing the box. They are just there to secure the sides to the back and give the whole thing some sturdy integrity. So these are going to go right over here. On the front, so I want the front to be an actioning flap, but it's not tucking into anything. It's really just going into the interior of these side walls. So we're going to do something akin to a quarter circle. Doesn't have to be exact. And in fact, I don't want it to necessarily be the full height here. So I'm going to shorten this just a little bit at the end here. So there's the front tabs, and I think that's everything I need for this bottom of the box. And so before I work on the top of the box, I may as well see if this bottom is going to work out. So the next step is to cut this out. I'm going to use scissors, and we'll see how this box assembles. So there's my template arranged similarly to my initial drawing. And now I'm going to use my ruler as a straight edge to help fold these folding lines. So I have scored all the folding lines, and I'm going to just do a mock assembly. So this flap, I want to flap out the other way. So there's the back and the sides. These are going to be always kind of fixed in this position. And then this front is going to just open and close like this. And then the cards would go in side there. So next step is I'm going to tape this shut. Starting with the side flaps. That's it. That's the bottom of the box. I don't want to tape in the rest. Let's try my deck of cards in here. So everything's held inside. This front flap can open. This makes a little easy access to get the cards out. But what will really make this work is making a lid to go on top of it. All right, the bottom is complete. Now I want to make the lid, and this is going to come down on top of the box. And so that is this diagram here, 7 3/4 by 5 3/4. So I will use page this way to accommodate more space. So I believe the way I've drawn it here is the outside of the box. So I actually want to flip it when I put my lines on what I want to be the inside of the box lid. So let's again, start by drawing. So I'm going to, in this case, start by drawing some center lines. So because this lid is going to go outside of my lower body box, I need to put even more leeway. So I need to stretch this 4 3/4 even further for the lid part, so that it can actually fit over top of everything else. Two 3/4 tall, but again with extra leeway. Now each of these front and backs are going to be 1 1/2. The sides need to also be 1 1/2. And now I need to add some various tabs and flaps. So this spot here is going to be the front when we flip this over and make it a lid. So this is the one where I actually want the flaps to be able to tuck into the front of the box. And that means a quarter circle, something roughly like this. I'm getting a little sloppy there. It'll be easier to make straight edges with the scissors. And then I want the back and the sides to secure together, so I was going to put flaps on the back here. And again, these are going to be hidden and permanent, and so they don't need to be super precise. All right, let's cut this out and see how this does. Yuck. All right, on to the next project. I'm going to make something that I'm going to call a slow shuffler. So when running role-playing games, especially long-lasting ones with no tight campaign events to follow, players will often be going their own way. They will pick places they want to explore that possibly haven't been planned out, and this totally works well, but it does require some improvisation from the game master. And one of the techniques that I've used in the past to help with my improvisation is to use picture cards as sort of an inspiration for my thought processes. And so what do I mean by that? So the cards I'm about to show you, they come from a game called Everway. And they had purposes in that game, which were also inspirational. And I've pulled them out to use them in other role-playing games. And so these cards might show you, you know, a person casting some sort of demon ritual, or some sort of golden feathered hawk creature. Maybe they show a distant tower the players might want to look at, or some natural environment like a very tall tree. And so looking at these cards would provide some inspiration, but I had a lot of them. Big stack of cards here that are all different. And I would want to cycle through them. I don't want to pull the same card very frequently. And the deck, as I've shown you, is rather large. It would be cumbersome to shuffle it properly. And so I developed a technique in which I just had these cards stacked up. And when I wanted to pull one for inspiration, I would just pull it out of the middle. And then after I was done with it, rather than shuffling the deck, I would just put it either on the top of the deck or on the bottom of the deck. And over time, I would alternate. And so what that does is cards that I've just used are at the extremes of the deck, top and bottom, and are not likely to be drawn again because I keep pulling out of the middle. And so that's what I mean by a slow shuffle. It is essentially random because when you pull one out of the middle, it's not always exactly the same spot every time. And cards that are at the ends initially start moving towards the middle as you pull from the middle, add to the ends. Things from the outside move inward and eventually get drawn again. And this process worked fairly well. It guarantees that you're not going to hit the same card too frequently. And I've used this for other purposes, one of which I'll show in a future episode. But this technique is very handy when you've got decks of cards, you want to get random cards quickly, and you don't want to have to always shuffle the decks. But what I've been missing for this is sort of an easy way to keep the cards together and kind of organize them. So I'm going to try and make a box with some special features to it. And the features are, I need to be able to return a card at either end. So either at the top or the bottom of the deck, I need to easily return a card at the end. And then I need to be able to get a card out of the middle also fairly easily. So what I'm picturing is basically a card with some sort of slots at the ends where it's easy to insert a card, and then a specialized slot in the middle that maybe can either catch the card or just let one or two cards shake loose so that I can then pull them out of the middle in a more or less random manner. And this box has to be a little bit loose so that that middle slot is not always going to pull the same card. So I haven't done this before. I haven't even really planned it out. I'm going to be making it live, and I'm going to switch the overhead camera to show you as I go. Okay, here's my workspace. This is the deck of picture cards that I want to fit in this box. A little cumbersome to manage the deck. And of course it's, could very easily fall apart if I'm not paying close attention to it. So what I want to do is build a box that will go around this deck, that will have entry points where I can put cards in on either side, and some sort of exit slot or mechanism that will deliver me cards from near the middle somehow. So let me start with a rough sketch of the idea that I have. So here's my box, and it's going to be roughly this size and shape. That's one card standing vertically. So here you can sort of envision a box in 3 dimensions with cards stacked inside. So it's going to need some sort of slot or entry point, which I can either put on the top or on the sides. I'm not sure which I want to prefer just yet. Probably the top. And then somewhere in the middle, a slot of some sort where cards can come out. So I think I want the entry points at the top. And what I can do is build some sort of little opener, maybe, that just makes it a little easier to feed them in when I'm actually in the process of using the box. So something a little hard to draw upside down, and I'm not the best artist to begin with. So I've drawn it strangely here, but a little flap that opens up on the side of the box with some sort of tabs or something that helps to keep it flowing inside the box or connected to the box even when it's kind of open. And then the cards can go in from these two sides. And then on the side, a simple slot, just enough for maybe 1 to 3 cards to fit out of. I don't want to make it too tight because then they'll never come out. It's got to go fully top to bottom. It's got to be at least the height of the cards anyway. But I'm going to try that first, and if that doesn't work, I have an idea for like a little pusher mechanism, and what that's going to be. So if I go to my top-down view, and there's a card slotted here, and let's just say the slot is on this side. So there's the slot, there's cards inside. So the pusher mechanism would be a slot on the other side, but not the full height, and some sort of folded card. You can see what I've drawn here. So a straight edge, it folds in a little bit, really just, again, the width of the slot, or as narrow as I can make it. It might even be just literally a card folded on its side if that's sturdy enough to do the pushing. And then have that attached to the opposite side from the slot just loosely enough that when it's attached or when it's not in use, the cards push it out. So it's sort of sitting at an angle like this, but then I can push on this like a little button almost. And every time I push on the button, it'll push on the cards and hopefully pop the cards out the other side. So that's the backup plan if the slot alone is a little too tight. So when designing any box, such as the ones I've been demonstrating, definitely want to start with measurements and some sort of sketch to figure out how you're going to arrange this on the paper. So starting with measurements. So the size of one card, so this is the side dimensions. Three and a half inches tall. Yeah, let me orient it top to bottom. Then side to side. 2.5 inches. And then my entire deck currently. I'm going to leave some space in case I get more cards. Looks like 3¼ inches. So minimum is 3¼ but I'm probably going to make this longer. So I'll just put a little plus there to note. I probably want at least 3.5 inches, but maybe as much as 4 inches, which would leave a lot of room for extra cards. And because I don't want them so tightly in there that it's hard to get cards in and out. So somewhere between 3.5 and 4 is probably what I'm going to use. So next I want to sketch the shape of the box. So when designing a box, you just kind of want to draw its bottom, or at least that's how I prefer to do it. So the bottom is going to be essentially what I've drawn here is the top, but the top and the bottom are roughly the same shape. So this is where cards are going to stack this way. And then I need to think about the 4 sides. And I can arrange these in a number of ways, but usually the one I like to start with and build around is to build each side out from the bottom. So this is, opposite sides of the box when it folds up, and then these are the opposite ends that fold up, and we'll have some sort of insertion mechanism. But then I need a top of the box. So right now, so every box is going to have 6 sides minimum. And so when we come up the side, I then need the top to fold over. So let's just mark these so that I can keep straight. In addition, I want to make sure that the top and the front join up fairly nicely. So many boxes, the lid has a little tab on the top that tucks in. I think I want to do this the opposite way. I want to have the front tuck into the top. And the reason for that is ultimately comes down to where the friction is. So cards are going to be sliding through this box, and all the weight is going to be on the bottom. So I want to keep that as clear as possible, top to front. If basically the least resistance is going to be at the top of the box, because if there's any gap at all, the cards will settle down a little bit. So if I put a flap on the front that tucks under the top, so when it's all assembled and tucked in, the flap will follow these dotted lines. So in addition, I want to do something similar on left and right, but this is also where I want to have an insertion point for new cards. So the way that I want to do that is to have these cards kind of open up. Instead of being sealed, I want them to open up, but to have a bit of a a wall on the side that can retain the cards from falling out the sides when this flap is open a little bit. And I think I don't want it to go all the way down. I don't want it to open up the entire side. I just want to open up maybe half of the sides. So that means whatever flap or wall I use only has to consider the opening half of the box. In addition, I want it to be very easy to sort of close up when I'm done using the box. So I think I'm going to do that with a side flaps of some sort. If you want some sort of motion, typically what you want is one side with a little bit of a fold over or hollow in it, and then the other side with some sort of tabs. So this is like insert tab A into slot B kind of mechanism, and the tabs fit in between that gap there. So and the other thing I want to do is I want to, again, minimize the interior friction, as it were. So I want to be careful not to design this in a way that puts catch points on the inside of the box where the cards are coming in and moving in from the left and right towards the center. So I want to keep that as clear as possible. So I don't necessarily need the tab and slot because my cards are moving in from the left and right towards the center. I can put the tab mechanisms on the cards themselves. Sorry, on the sides, on the left and right. It may not be this exact shape, but something along these lines to whatever halfway opening point I have. I could put secondary tabs inside here, the part of the side that I don't want to have open. And in effect, I can affix these, tape them or glue the stationary portions at least. When the box is closed, they're going to tape in here. I need to think about what shapes I need these to be when the box is closed. Triangles are not a great shape for boxes. And also I need these flaps to open and close when the lid is shut. And so that means I need a shape that's going to be curved. So I may end up doing something more like this. Sorry for the double images. The eraser on this pencil is no good. For most flaps like this, the exact dimensions are not super important. And even if I didn't make this curve just right on the first try, I can always trim it down once I have the box assembled to get a better shape out of it. Okay, that covers the basic shape of the box. And I will want to be able to maybe open it up to remove all the cards quickly. So this front flap is not going to be taped or glued, but it can be tall enough, deep enough to be fairly secure once the box is shut, so that it takes a little effort to get the front open. What else? The front side is where the slot is going to go, so I just need to remember to cut a little hole here. And I'm not going to cut the hole on the back side for this pusher unless I actually need to add that feature. And that feature can actually go kind of on the outside of the box, so I don't need to worry too much about what's going on the inside of the box. So now the only question is, do I think they'll push easily enough, or do I need to worry about the bottom and maybe do something to reduce friction? I think it'll be all right. These cards are not super heavy, and so I don't think I need anything special. So this is my template. Now I need to figure out how big it's going to be. So I've already worked out the height of the box, minimum 3.5. the bottom and top, this is the card's narrow dimension is 2.5. And then the left and right, they're the same 2.5, but they are the full height of a card. And I know they look really short here. So, but really it's the full 3.5 at least. Inside edge, this was the minimum 3.25. All right, so now I'm going to work out the width and height minimums. So I need to account for this flap later, but to figure out my minimums, I'm just going to be adding across here. So in the left, bottom, right direction, 2 3.5s is 7, plus 3 is 10, plus 1/4. So minimum 10.25, but I really want to make it something a little closer to 11 inches, which will perfectly fit on my page. So let's just call it that. So top, I think, or top, back, bottom, and front is going to be the problem because I think it's going to be more. So 2 3.5s is 7. 2 2.5s is 5. So that is 12 inches minimum. So what this is telling me is that this isn't all going to fit on one piece of paper. What I'm making is a little bit too big. And that means I need to break it into 2 parts. So I like that the left, bottom, right dimension fits perfectly on that 11 inch paper. So I think I want to keep that intact, and I need to do something different to get my front, bottom, back, top into 2 pieces. And so if I just remove the top, it's not enough. It's still, right, because if I'm going 11 inches left to right, I need to get down to 8.5 on the front, bottom, and back. So I think what I want to do is on the bottom. So here's our very shrunk down version of the bottom, front, left and right. So on the bottom, I'm going to add a flap, a tab, that's going to then join up with the back and top piece. So if I take my back and top, so I want this to tuck in, and to minimize the friction, I want it to be actually kind of on the outside of the back. And so maybe what I can do here is give the back some extra flaps that, instead of folding up against left and right, is going to go backwards, so that if I just tip this so that you're looking at it from the bottom, these flaps will close up and lie flush against the back here. And rather than sealing it, I'll leave it open, and that will be where this tab tucks into. And I could use this as part of my pusher mechanism. That leaves me a little bit of extra space to come up with a pusher that will essentially be on either one or maybe both of these back flaps. Probably just one of them. So for now, let's imagine a little bit of extra piece, and this is going to be the push mechanism. And so it's going to come in across the back, and we'll make a little slot in the back. It doesn't have to be the full height. Just has to be tall enough for whatever push mechanism I have. And now the top of the box, I still want the front to tuck into the top with some security. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make the top. On the one hand, I want the front and the top to seal up. Oh, these flaps I'm going to put in the other direction. So instead of folding them to the outside of the box, I'm going to fold these flaps to the inside of the box. Because the top, there's not a lot of friction or catch points. So again, I can fold these in and then tuck my front tab piece into there. So I'm essentially breaking this into two parts, but I have now added some flaps on both the back and the top. So this new bottom piece, as I have now scribbled over, it's 6 inches this way, back and top, 3.5, 2.5, plus a little bit. And then now side to side, it is the 4 inches, right? My 3.25 plus ended up being 4 full inches. And then another 4 inches to reach the full center. So that's 8 inches. And then if I want to add this pusher mechanism on, I don't know how big that needs to be, but it doesn't have to be a whole lot. So I'm going to have extra space to play with. So I think I will still put this in a landscape orientation on my final page. So what this tells me is I'm going to need 2 sheets of paper to build my box out of. So for this box, I want it to be fairly sturdy. The printer paper is great for mock-ups, but really doesn't hold up for long. So what I showed you with the other box is more like a proof of concept than a real lasting box. But for this one, I'm going to make it on cardstock. Okay, here are 2 sheets of 65-pound cardstock. So I'm going to start with the bottom half piece. So I've drawn a little template here, well, size guide, more like. So let me replace this 3.25 with a 4, since I know that the 3.5, 3.5, and 4 is the 11-inch width of this paper. So I'm going to need a flap. I'm probably going to do this as 2 flaps with a gap in the middle so that I have space for my mechanism. So those should not be taller than the back, so it should not be more than 3.5 inches, but that's probably overkill anyway. I need to leave at least 6 inches for my front and bottom, and then a little bit more for the flap. So I've got 6 inches for the important top to bottom parts, and on this 8.5 sheet of paper, that leaves me 2.5 inches top and bottom. So I'm just going to divide it up evenly. It's roughly 1.25 each direction. So I'm going to be using up a large portion of this paper. So what that tells me is that this gap is 1.25. So I wrote 1, but really it's 1.25. I'm just getting really tiny with my drawing here. Sorry about that. Definitely a little bit tight. So what I'm going to do is stretch things a little bit. So I left space on this bottom left to right? We needed 3.25. I'm using 4. So I'm going to squeeze that in just a little bit, and I'm going to squeeze these tabs out just a little bit. The reason I'm squeezing them in here is to leave a little bit more space on the sides, right? So this is the left and right sides. I want to have just a little bit extra height to play with, and since I left myself plenty of space this direction, I think it should be fine. So I'm kind of eyeballing it here, which is not really good policy, but this is the sort of down and dirty, show you how to make things happen. All right, so now in addition, I need these sorts of flaps on the left and right that I haven't taken care of yet. So these are going to kind of tilt open, and I'm going to put it at roughly the halfway mark. So the cards are about 4 inches tall, sorry, 3.5 inches tall. So let's just open up the top 1.5 inches. The front now is going to get a tab that folds into the top. Doesn't need to go all the way to the edge, so I usually just cut in a little bit on these tabs. And when I'm cutting them out, I could probably make them even a little more rounded. And then on the left and on the bottom, I want to leave a little gap right in the middle. So there's roughly where my front slot needs to be. And it needs to be the width of a couple of cards, which is pretty tiny. And then on the back, I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap because I don't know what my pusher is going to look like. And it doesn't matter too much. This is all getting tucked away. So I just need to leave a little gap in the right spot where my pusher would kind of squeeze through there. Okay, left and right needs flaps. So there's my back, front, or sorry, bottom, front, left, and right. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the back and top here. And I'll probably show that even faster. All right, my back and top template is a little easier. So now I'm going to cut these both out. Now you fold them along your lines. Use the straight edge to help guide your folds. Here are my two pieces. Now I'm going to give them a little assembly. Here's the loosely assembled box. I haven't taped or glued anything down yet. The cardstock is much easier to fit together while empty. If you're just using regular printer paper, you kind of need to use the contents to solidify the box for this assembly stage. So everything goes together more or less as I wanted. I need to test my fold out sections. So let's quickly get this back together. Okay, so there's a little friction on this piece and on this piece. Okay, I like how that works. So this is a time where you might want to decorate your box. I need to cut the slot in the front side. Now, if you used a straight edge cutter with an appropriate backing, right, you can't always just do it on a table, but if you use a straight edge cutter instead of a scissors, cutting out a slot in the middle of something would be a little easier than what I'm about to try. All right, so I need to test whether this box will hold my cards and maybe allow some to come out, because I need to decide whether I need to make some sort of pushing mechanism on the back. So what I can see, not sure if this shows up on camera. When I look in the slot that I've made, I can see the cards are a little tilted. That's because I left some space, and the leeway means they don't stand up straight. So that means I need a helper mechanism. That means I need a pusher and maybe some form of straightening system. All right, let me take this apart and add in a pushing mechanism. But the idea is that this presses in like a little bit of a button, and hopefully will press on the cards when they're in the box. So let me reassemble my box now. So one thing I'm quickly noticing is that my button doesn't stay centered. So I need to get part of it on the inside, I think. So I'm going to feed these edges through. See if I can use that to keep my button somehow centered in the box. So testing with a box that's not really sealed up is kind of tricky. I'm going to try it once more, but I'm feeling pretty good about this. So I think if I get close, I'm going to start sealing the box up. So my pusher isn't really pushing enough. It is getting mushed up by the cards. It needs to be a little sturdier. So I can do that, I think, by giving it a second fold. Or actually 2 more folds. So it's got a more rectangular pushing surface. It's only, oh, it's pressing in a different spot than the slot in the front. So I can feel it with my fingers that there are cards being pushed. They're just not lined up with the slot. It's because I've been kind of winging it instead of doing things precisely. So maybe what I just do is widen up the front. So I'm going to experiment with this a little bit, and then when I've got it all working, I will show the end result. Okay, so I still haven't taped everything together, but I've got my cards in here. I just widened the slot a little bit, made a tiny adjustment to the shape of the pusher, and my pusher button now juts out a few cards a little bit. It's not as much as I'd hoped for, but it does the trick, and I think when I assemble it, I might be able to get more consistent behavior out of this. So now I'm going to tape down the parts that are not meant to move. So now let's see if I can get a card out of here. So there's a card, there's a card. Do they come out on their own? Well, now the shaking, with a wider front, the shaking mechanism seems to work fine. So maybe I didn't need that whole back mechanism, but it can help. And now if we're putting them back in, if the top and front stay shut, you can put cards in fairly easily from either side. Then close up the left and right, and they're contained in their box. So this is a prototype, and next steps, if I were doing this for long term, now that I know what works and that maybe I don't need this button mechanism, I could either improve it or just make this front panel a little more forgiving and just let the cards shake out, or at least shake loose to where I can grab them. And I would do this a second time, either in a colored cardstock, or after making the pattern on white cardstock, I could decorate it with markers, pencils, pens, and make it more attractive to look at than this little monstrosity. I could use glue instead of tape for the moving parts. I know I need to make this tab a little more secure. So those are adjustments I can make when going to a final version of this box. But there you have it, a rather complicated paper craft box for sorting and distributing picture cards. All right, the last few episodes I've stalled on adding new rules, but today I am going to be adding a few new rules. So I'm going to add a new episode scoring rule. This is rule 4, making faces rule. And this is going to be those little cartoony faces that I show in the screen. It's going to be estimate how many distinct game faces I use in the episode. Score that number unless guessing too high. So as with all the other rules, this is an estimation game. You don't have to be perfect, but better too low than too high. So each face is a combination of a color, a hat or no hat, a facial expression, a hand. Occasionally there might be a second hand or other things, but each one of those is something distinctive that makes it different than all the other faces. Sometimes I reuse them, so it's not just every switch of faces. If I use a face near the beginning and the same face near the end, that's just one face, not two. Anyway, you take your estimate, and that's the score you get for that episode scoring. And as always, the episode rules, you get one of those, so rule 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then bonus rules, you can score as many as apply. So we're going to make another bonus rule as well. Bonus D is the catch-up rule. So I realize it's a little early in the series for this, but for people who haven't scored yet or people who come in late, the catch-up rule is bonus points equal to the number of episodes you have submitted a score for the first time within the last 7 days. 7 days. And so what that means is if you've just found this channel and you'd like a nice little score boost, you can go and score all the episodes that you watch while you're catching up and learning all the rules, and you score by submitting an entry. And if it's your first entry, each of those episodes counts as a bonus point for the catch-up, and you can use that, for each of them, though the catch-up bonus will be the best for the last one that you do. So go ahead and submit your scores for episodes and count how many, and that's your catch-up bonus. That doesn't have a carry forward, but that's kind of its own little boost to get you started. Now I'm going to add these to the summary. So rule 4 is making faces, and bonus D is the catch-up. And as always, these rules and details and any corrections that have happened over time can be found on the Discord channel. So if you want to kind of find everything in one place, go to the Discord channel. The link is below. All right, so I hope you enjoyed this episode. Next time on Game Design Game, I'm going to show you a way to use tarot cards, specifically the Tarot Major Arcana, as a game mechanic that should be able to work in just about any role-playing game to inject a little bit of personality and flavor and twist to the scenes as your adventures play out. Until next time, gamers, Valar Matis. Garcilas.